The people we remember most are often the ones everyone else forgets. The rain had started just after sunset, turning the streets of Millfield into ribbons of reflected light and shadow. Inside Harper's Grill, the dinner rush was over. Chairs were already being turned upside down on empty tables. The kitchen staff moved with the familiar urgency of people counting the final minutes before going home. At the front counter, Lily Carter adjusted the strings of her apron and glanced at the clock above the register. 9:55. 5 minutes until closing time. The restaurant smelled of fresh coffee, warm bread, and the lingering comfort of a long day finally ending. Most customers had already left. Only a young couple near the door remained, finishing dessert while employees quietly prepared for the night. "Looks like we might get out early for once," one server said while stacking menus. A cook laughed from the kitchen. "Do not jinx it." Lily smiled but said nothing. She had worked enough closing shifts to know that restaurants had a strange way of surprising people. Outside, rain tapped softly against the large front windows. The empty seat by the window remained untouched, facing Main Street and the glow of old street lamps beyond the glass. It was Lily's favorite table in the restaurant. Something about it always felt peaceful. At exactly 9:58, the bell above the entrance door chimed. Every head in the room turned toward the sound. An elderly man stepped inside. Water dripped from the shoulders of his worn brown coat. His silver hair was damp from the rain. He stood quietly for a moment, as if uncertain whether he should have entered at all. The room fell strangely silent. One employee glanced toward the clock and sighed. Another exchanged a frustrated look with a coworker. Closing time had almost arrived. The old man seemed to notice their reactions immediately. His eyes moved across the nearly empty restaurant before settling toward the floor. "I am sorry," he said softly. "I did not realize you were about to close." One of the servers forced a polite smile. "We are, actually." The message was clear. The old man nodded. "Of course." He turned slightly toward the door. Then Lily stepped forward. "Sir." The old man paused. "Yes. You are welcome to stay." Several employees looked at her in surprise. Lily ignored them. She picked up a menu and walked toward the window table. "I have a seat right here." The old man followed her gaze. The chair beside the window waited beneath the warm glow of a hanging light. Rain streaked softly down the glass behind it. For a brief moment, something flickered across his face. Relief. Gratitude. Perhaps even recognition. Lily pulled the chair out gently. "Best seat in the house," she said with a small smile. The old man looked at the table for several seconds before sitting down. Outside, rain continued to fall across Main Street. Inside, while everyone else focused on closing, Lily quietly placed a menu in front of a man nobody seemed to notice. Neither of them knew it yet, but that small act of kindness was about to change both of their lives. The old man sat quietly by the window while the rain traced silver lines across the glass. Around him, the restaurant continued its closing routine. Chairs were stacked. Floors were swept. Lights in the far dining area began to dim one section at a time. Yet somehow the small pool of warm light above the window table made his corner feel untouched by the rush to leave. Lily returned carrying a fresh cup of coffee and placed it carefully in front of him. "Can I get you anything else besides the menu?" she asked. The old man looked up and offered a grateful smile. "The coffee is perfect." His voice was gentle, almost hesitant, as though he was not accustomed to taking up space in other people's evenings. Lily noticed the way he wrapped both hands around the cup before taking the first sip. Outside, the rain intensified. Cars rolled past beneath glowing streetlights. The old man seemed far more interested in the view beyond the glass than the menu resting beside him. After a moment, he ordered a bowl of chicken soup and a slice of apple pie. Simple choices. Comfort food. The kind of meal people ordered when they wanted familiarity more than excitement. While the kitchen prepared his order, Lily continued helping finish the final tasks of the night. More than once she noticed coworkers glancing toward the window table. "I cannot believe he came in 2 minutes before closing," one server whispered. "Some people do not know when to quit." Lily looked toward the old man. He sat quietly staring into the rain, causing no trouble for anyone. "Maybe he just needed somewhere warm to sit," she replied. The server shrugged and returned to stacking glasses. A few minutes later, Lily delivered the soup. Steam curled upward beneath the hanging light. "Careful," she said. "The bowl is hot." "Thank you." He paused before lifting his spoon. You did not have to keep that table open. Lily smiled. It was not a problem. The old man glanced toward the window. It is my favorite seat. Something about the way he said it caught her attention. Not favorite. Familiar. As though the table belonged to a memory rather than a preference. Have you been here before? Lily asked. The old man looked out at the rain again. A long time ago. Before she could ask another question, a cook called from the kitchen. Lily excused herself and returned to work. Nearly 30 minutes passed. One by one, employees clocked out and left. Eventually, only Lily, the manager, and the old man remained. The manager checked his watch and sighed. We really need to close. Lily nodded, but before she could approach the table, the old man carefully folded his napkin and stood. He reached into his coat pocket, paid the bill, and prepared to leave. As he walked toward the door, he paused beside the counter. Thank you for saving the seat, he said. Lily smiled. You are welcome. The old man looked back toward the window one last time. For a brief second, sadness passed across his face. Then he opened the door and disappeared into the rainy night. Lily watched him leave, unaware that he would return, and unaware that the story connected to that window seat had only just begun. The following Thursday, the rain was gone. Clear skies stretched above Millfield, and the last light of the afternoon painted the storefronts in shades of gold. Inside Harper's Grill, the dinner crowd moved through its usual rhythm. Families shared meals. Workers stopped in after long shifts. Coffee cups clinked softly against saucers. Lily moved between tables with the ease that came from years of practice. She had not thought much about the old man since the night he visited. Yet as closing time approached, she found herself glancing occasionally toward the window table. 9:45 arrived. Then 9:50. The seat remained empty. Lily silently laughed at herself and returned to wiping menus. Then, at exactly 9:58, the bell above the door chimed. She looked up immediately. The old man stood there once again. This time his coat was dry, and the evening air carried only a slight chill. For a brief moment, surprise crossed his face when he saw her smile. Good evening, Lily said. Welcome back. The old man nodded. Good evening. Without asking, Lily picked up a menu and walked toward the window table. Your seat is available. Something warm appeared in his eyes. Not excitement. Not happiness exactly. Recognition. As though a familiar tradition had quietly survived another week. He settled into the chair and looked out the window toward Main Street. The streetlights were beginning to glow. Cars passed slowly. People hurried home. Yet the old man seemed perfectly content simply watching the world move by. Lily brought him coffee before he even asked. Thank you, he said. You remembered. You ordered coffee last time. The old man smiled faintly. Most people do not notice small things. Lily shrugged. Small things are usually the important things. For several seconds, he seemed to consider that answer. Then he looked back toward the window. Throughout the evening, he remained in the same seat. He ordered the same bowl of soup, the same slice of pie. He spoke little, but unlike the previous visit, there was a certain comfort in his silence. Near closing time, Lily approached with the check. Can I ask you something? She said. The old man looked up. Of course. Lily hesitated. Why this table? She immediately worried she had overstepped. Yet the old man did not appear offended. Instead, his gaze drifted toward the window once more. The lights outside reflected softly against the glass. Some places become important for reasons nobody else can see, he said quietly. Lily followed his gaze. That sounds like there is a story attached to it. A gentle smile touched his face. Perhaps there is. He did not say more. Yet the answer somehow revealed more than a detailed explanation could have. As he prepared to leave, he paused beside the table and rested one hand lightly against the chair. The gesture lasted less than a second. Most people would not have noticed it. Lily did. It was the way someone touches something precious. Something connected to memory. Something connected to love. After he disappeared into the night, Lily remained standing beside the window for a moment. The chair sat empty beneath the hanging light. Outside, the town continued its ordinary routines. Inside, a question had quietly taken root in her mind. Who was the old man really waiting for every week? Over the next several weeks, a quiet pattern began to form. Every Thursday evening, just before closing time, the old man appeared at Harper's Grill. He always arrived within the same few minutes. He always chose the same table beside the window. And he always spent most of the evening looking out at Main Street, as if expecting something the rest of the world could no longer see. Eventually, the routine became familiar enough that Lily stopped checking the clock. Somehow she always knew when he was about to arrive. On one particular evening, autumn winds swept fallen leaves across the sidewalks outside. The restaurant buzzed with its usual energy. Customers laughed over dinner. Coffee brewed behind the counter. The scent of warm pie drifted from the kitchen. Yet when the old man entered, Lily noticed something immediately. He looked more tired than usual. Not physically exhausted. Emotionally distant. As though the weight he carried had grown heavier during the past week. "Good evening," Lily said as she greeted him. "Your table is ready." A faint smile appeared on his face. "Thank you, Lily." It was the first time he had used her name. Somehow that small detail surprised her. He settled into the chair by the window while she brought his coffee. Outside, the sky slowly darkened. Streetlights flickered on one by one. People hurried home carrying grocery bags and briefcases. The old man watched every passing figure. Lily found herself wondering what exactly he was searching for. Later that evening, during a quieter moment, she approached the table with a fresh refill. "Can I ask you something?" she said carefully. The old man looked up. "You may?" Lily hesitated. "Every week you sit here and watch the street." He glanced toward the window. "I do. Are you waiting for someone?" For several seconds, he said nothing. The sounds of the restaurant seemed to fade around them. Finally, he smiled softly. In a way, Lily followed his gaze through the glass. Cars passed beneath the glow of street lamps. A young couple crossed the street laughing together. Nothing seemed unusual. "Do they ever arrive?" she asked. The old man continued looking outside. "No." His answer carried neither disappointment nor anger. Only acceptance. "Then why keep waiting?" A gentle sadness touched his eyes. "Because some people change your life so completely that even after they are gone, part of you still expects to see them around the corner." Lily felt her chest tighten slightly. The answer revealed far more than she expected. Before she could respond, the old man nodded toward the empty chair across from him. "Memories are strange," he said quietly. "They never ask permission before returning." Then he fell silent again. Lily looked at the untouched chair. For the first time, she noticed that he occasionally glanced toward it while speaking. Not often, just enough to feel meaningful. As closing time approached, he finished his coffee and prepared to leave. Yet before standing, he rested his hand briefly on the edge of the empty chair beside him. The gesture lasted only a moment. Still, Lily understood something important. The old man was not coming to the restaurant because of the food. He was not coming because of the coffee. He was returning because that table held a story. And somewhere inside that story was a person he still missed every single day. The question lingered in Lily's mind long after the old man left that evening. During the following week, she found herself noticing details she had overlooked before. The way he always arrived at nearly the same time. The way he paused beside the window before sitting down. The way his attention returned again and again to the empty chair across from him. None of it felt accidental. By Thursday evening, autumn had settled more deeply over Millfield. A cool wind moved through the streets, carrying leaves along the sidewalks. Inside Harper's Grill, the familiar rhythm of dinner service filled the restaurant. Yet when the clock approached closing time, Lily quietly prepared the window table before anyone asked. She straightened the chairs, adjusted the salt and pepper shakers, and folded a fresh napkin beside the menu. When the bell above the entrance finally chimed, she looked up. The old man had returned. This time his expression softened immediately when he saw the table waiting. "Good evening," Lily said. "Looks like your seat survived another week." A gentle smile appeared on his face. "I was hoping it might." He settled into the chair while Lily poured coffee. For a while, everything followed the now familiar pattern. He watched the street. She served customers. The restaurant slowly emptied as the evening moved toward closing time. Then, while clearing a nearby table, Lily noticed something unusual. A folded paper napkin rested near the old man's plate. Written across it in careful handwriting was a single name. Eleanor. Lily looked away immediately, feeling as though she had accidentally stepped into a private memory. Yet the name stayed with her. Later, when she returned with fresh coffee, the old man noticed her glance toward the napkin. Instead of hiding it, he picked it up gently. "My wife," he said. The words were quiet but clear. Lily sat briefly across from him during a slow moment. "Eleanor." He nodded. She loved this table. Lily looked toward the window. Outside, the The streetlights cast warm reflections across the glass. Did you come here together often? A faint laugh escaped him. More times than I could count. His eyes remained fixed on the empty chair. She always wanted the seat facing the street. She liked watching people. Lily smiled. What did you like? The old man glanced toward the chair where he sat her day, watching her watch people. For a moment, neither spoke. The answer carried years inside it. Years of shared meals, conversations, ordinary evenings, and small moments that had become priceless through time. How long has she been gone? Lily asked gently. The old man lowered his gaze to the napkin. 3 years. The restaurant suddenly felt quieter. Even the hum of the refrigerators seemed distant. He folded the napkin carefully and slipped it into his coat pocket. Everyone tells you that time makes loss easier, he said. What nobody tells you is that certain places remember for you. Lily looked around the restaurant. She understood then that he was not returning to relive the past. He was returning because this place still held part of it. As closing time approached and customers drifted out into the night, Lily watched the old man sitting beside the window once more. For the first time, she knew the name connected to the empty chair. And somehow that simple detail transformed a stranger into someone whose story she genuinely wanted to understand. The following Thursday arrived wrapped in crisp autumn air and clear skies. Main Street glowed beneath rows of amber streetlights, and the windows of Harper's Grill reflected the quiet charm of the town settling into evening. Long before closing time, Lily found herself thinking about the name she had learned the week before. Eleanor. Somehow the restaurant felt different now. The window table was no longer simply a table. It had become part of a story. As the dinner crowd slowly thinned, Lily noticed the date printed on a receipt while organizing paperwork near the register. October 22nd. She paused. Something stirred in her memory. Earlier that week, she had overheard the old man mention that he and Eleanor used to celebrate important occasions at the restaurant. The thought lingered. When closing time approached, and the familiar bell above the entrance finally chimed, Samuel Whitmore stepped inside. He wore the same brown coat and carried the same gentle expression. Yet tonight there was a heaviness in his eyes that Lily had never seen before. Good evening, she said softly. Samuel offered a polite smile. Good evening, Lily. She guided him toward the window table. This time, however, something was different. Before he arrived, Lily had quietly placed a second folded napkin across from his seat. Beside it sat a small white flower in a glass vase borrowed from the front counter. Nothing extravagant, nothing dramatic, just a simple gesture. Samuel stopped when he saw it. For several seconds he said nothing. His eyes moved from the flower to the empty chair and then back to Lily. What is this? He asked quietly. Lily suddenly felt nervous. I hope you do not mind. I remembered something you said. Samuel remained standing. What did I say? That some places remember for us. Silence settled between them. The sounds of dishes and distant conversations seemed to fade away. Lily looked at the empty chair. I thought maybe tonight deserved remembering. Samuel slowly lowered himself into his seat. His gaze never left the flower. After a long moment, he spoke. Today would have been our 49th wedding anniversary. Lily felt her throat tighten. She had guessed it might be something important, but hearing the words made the moment feel far more real. I am glad I remembered correctly, she said softly. Samuel smiled, though emotion shimmered behind his eyes. Most people would not have noticed. Lily shrugged gently. You notice things when someone comes back every week. For the next hour, Samuel remained at the table while the restaurant gradually emptied around him. Yet tonight he seemed different. He talked more than usual. He shared stories about Eleanor's laugh, her love of people watching, and the way she always ordered apple pie before deciding what she wanted for dinner. Each memory brought warmth into the room. By the time closing time arrived, the flower still sat beside the empty chair, illuminated by the soft hanging light above the table. As Samuel prepared to leave, he looked at Lily with quiet gratitude. You have no idea what this evening meant to me. Lily smiled. Maybe not completely. Samuel glanced toward the empty chair one last time. More than most people ever would. And for the first time since he began visiting the restaurant, the sadness in his eyes seemed slightly lighter when he walked into the night. The weeks that followed brought a subtle change neither Lily nor Samuel mentioned out loud. Yet both of them felt it. The restaurant no longer seemed like a place where an old man visited to sit alone with memories. It had quietly become a place where those memories were welcomed. Thursday evenings developed their own rhythm. Lily would prepare the window table before Samuel arrived. A fresh napkin, a clean coffee cup, the chair across from him positioned exactly as it always had been. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would attract attention, just a collection of small gestures that carried meaning. One evening, near the beginning of November, cold air pressed against the windows while customers hurried inside seeking warmth. The restaurant glowed beneath soft lights and the comforting scent of coffee and baked pie. Samuel arrived a few minutes earlier than usual. When Lily greeted him, she immediately noticed something different. He was carrying a small leather photo album. "Good evening," she said. Samuel smiled. "Good evening, Lily." He settled into the familiar seat and placed the album carefully on the table beside his coffee. For nearly an hour, he left it untouched. Eventually, during a quiet moment after most customers had gone home, Lily approached with a refill. Samuel rested his hand on the album and looked toward the empty chair. "Would you like to meet Eleanor?" he asked. Lily blinked in surprise. "I would." Samuel opened the cover slowly. Inside were photographs worn smooth by years of handling. A young woman laughing beside a lake. A couple dancing at a community event. Two people sitting beside a restaurant window many years earlier. Lily smiled immediately. "She looks happy." Samuel studied the photograph. She was. Page after page revealed an ordinary life. Vacations, birthdays, road trips, small celebrations. Nothing extraordinary. Yet together they formed something remarkable. A life shared. "People think the most valuable moments are the big ones," Samuel said quietly. "The promotions, the achievements, the milestones." He touched a photograph showing Eleanor holding a cup of coffee and laughing at something outside the frame. "But these are the moments I miss." Lily looked carefully at the picture. "Because they happened every day." Samuel nodded. "Exactly." The restaurant grew quieter around them. Even the kitchen had fallen silent. For the first time since meeting him, Lily understood that Samuel was not holding on to the past because he could not move forward. He returned because remembering was part of honoring someone he still loved. Before closing, Samuel showed her one final photograph. It depicted the very window table where they sat now. Eleanor smiled toward the camera while evening lights reflected across the glass behind her. On the back of the photograph, written in faded ink, were 4 simple words. "Our favorite place together." Samuel closed the album gently. Neither spoke for several moments. Then Lily looked at the empty chair and smiled. "I think she would like that it is still being used." Samuel followed her gaze. A warmth appeared in his eyes unlike anything she had seen before. "I think she would like that someone still remembers to save the seat." Winter arrived gradually in Millfield. The trees along Main Street stood bare against pale skies, and each Thursday evening the windows of Harper's Grill glowed like a small refuge from the cold. By now, Samuel's visits had become part of the restaurant's rhythm. Most employees recognized him, though few knew anything about him. To them, he was simply the elderly gentleman who liked the table by the window. To Lily, he had become something more. He was a reminder that every stranger carried a story invisible to the world around them. One Thursday evening, snowflakes drifted softly outside as customers hurried home before the weather worsened. Inside, the restaurant felt especially warm. Christmas decorations hung from the ceiling. Small lights reflected in the windows. Near closing time, Samuel arrived carrying no photo album and no stories. The moment Lily saw him, she sensed something was different. His smile appeared, but only briefly. The familiar warmth behind it seemed distant. After settling into his chair, he spent nearly an hour staring through the glass without touching his coffee. The empty chair across from him remained exactly where it always stood. Lily watched from a distance, unsure whether she should interrupt. Finally, during a quiet moment, she approached. "Everything okay tonight?" she asked gently. Samuel looked toward her. For a second, he seemed surprised to hear the question. Then he nodded. "I suppose so." Lily knew that answer was not entirely true. She pulled out the chair across from him and sat down briefly. "You do not sound convinced." Samuel let out a slow breath. Snow continued falling beyond the window. Cars moved carefully along the street. Today would have been Eleanor's 72nd birthday. The words settled quietly between them. Lily glanced toward the empty chair. Suddenly, the untouched coffee, the distant expression, and the silence all made sense. Samuel folded his hands together. "For years I knew exactly what to buy her." A faint smile crossed his face. Not expensive things. She never cared about those. He looked toward the street. Sometimes flowers. Sometimes books. Once I gave her a bird feeder because she spent every morning watching cardinals outside our kitchen window. His smile faded gently. This year I spent half the day wondering what I would have bought her if she were still here. Lily felt her heart ache for him, not because of the sadness itself, but because of how familiar it seemed. Grief had become part of his life, woven into ordinary days that nobody else noticed. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Lily stood and disappeared into the kitchen. A few minutes later, she returned carrying a small slice of chocolate cake with a single candle resting in the center. Samuel stared at it in surprise. Lily. She placed the plate beside the flower vase that still occasionally appeared on the table. Every birthday deserves a cake. The candle flickered softly beneath the restaurant lights. Samuel looked at the empty chair. Then he looked at the cake. For the first time since entering, emotion rose visibly into his eyes. He lowered his head for a moment, as if gathering himself. When he finally looked up, his voice was barely above a whisper. Nobody remembered. Lily smiled gently. Someone did. Outside, snow continued falling across the quiet town. Inside, beneath the warm glow of the window light, an old man sat before a birthday cake meant for a memory. And for the first time in a very long while, he did not feel completely alone. The night of the birthday cake lingered in Samuel's mind long after he left the restaurant. For the first time in years, a difficult day had ended with something other than silence. Yet while the evening brought comfort to him, it quietly created tension elsewhere. Over the following weeks, several employees began noticing how much attention the elderly customer received. Most of them said nothing. A few rolled their eyes when the window table remained reserved near closing time. Others questioned why one guest seemed to receive treatment no one else did. Lily ignored the comments at first. To her, the answer felt obvious. She was not doing anything special. She was simply treating someone with kindness. One Thursday evening, snow covered the sidewalks outside Harper's Grill. The dinner crowd had been unusually busy, leaving everyone tired and eager to finish their shifts. As closing time approached, Samuel arrived and settled into his usual seat. Lily brought coffee and greeted him warmly before returning to work. The evening passed peacefully until nearly 10 o'clock. Most customers had left. The staff began cleaning. Near the counter, the restaurant manager, Richard Bennett, watched Samuel sitting alone by the window. Richard was not a cruel man. He was practical. Numbers mattered to him. Efficiency mattered to him. And lately he had begun viewing the situation through that lens alone. We need to talk, he said quietly to Lily. She looked up from organizing receipts. About what? Richard nodded toward the window. About him. Lily immediately understood. What about him? Richard crossed his arms. Every Thursday we stay open later than necessary. The staff notices. The payroll notices. Lily glanced toward Samuel. He sat quietly with his coffee, causing trouble for absolutely no one. He is a paying customer. He is one customer, Richard replied. And we are not a community center. The words landed harder than he intended. Lily looked at the old man again. Through the window, snowflakes drifted beneath the streetlights. Samuel appeared completely unaware of the conversation happening nearby. You do not know his story, she said softly. Richard shook his head. And I do not need to. My responsibility is running a business. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Richard sighed. Starting next week, we close at 10. No exceptions. If he comes in late, he leaves when everyone else does. Lily felt disappointment settle inside her. Not anger. Not outrage. Just sadness. Some decisions followed rules while missing the reason those rules existed. Later that evening, after the staff had left, Samuel prepared to go home. As Lily handed him the receipt, she hesitated. He noticed immediately. Something is troubling you. Lily forced a small smile. Just a long day. Samuel studied her expression but did not press further. Instead, he placed his coat on and stood beside the window table. His gaze lingered briefly on the empty chair across from him. Thank you for another evening, he said. They are becoming rarer than you realize. Lily felt an unexpected ache at those words. Perhaps because she suddenly understood that none of us ever know how many familiar evenings remain. Samuel stepped toward the door and disappeared into the snowy night. Behind him, the window table sat quietly beneath the warm hanging light. For the first time since their friendship began, Lily worried that something fragile was about to be taken away. The following Thursday arrived beneath a gray winter sky. Snow remained piled along the sidewalks, and the cold seemed to linger even behind the restaurant windows. All day, Lily carried Richard's words with her. Starting tonight, the rules would change. 10 o'clock would mean 10 o'clock. No exceptions. No lingering conversations. No quiet evenings by the window. As customers came and went, she found herself glancing repeatedly toward the door. When Samuel finally arrived shortly before closing, his familiar smile appeared the moment he saw her. "Good evening, Lily." "Good evening, Samuel." She guided him to the window table as always, but something inside her felt uneasy. Samuel seemed to notice immediately. Over the past months, he had become surprisingly skilled at reading her expressions. "You are worried about something," he said as he settled into his chair. Lily hesitated. "Maybe a little." Samuel nodded gently. "Then perhaps you should tell me." For a moment, she considered avoiding the conversation. It would have been easier. Yet honesty had become part of their friendship. She pulled out the chair across from him and sat down briefly. "The manager wants everyone out exactly at closing time from now on." Samuel listened quietly. "I see. He thinks keeping the table available after hours is bad for business." Samuel looked toward the window. Outside, headlights passed slowly through the snow-covered street. "That sounds like something a manager would say." His calm response surprised her. "You are not upset?" A faint smile touched his face. "No." Lily frowned slightly. "But this place matters to you." "It does." He folded his hands together. "But every place belongs to someone else. We are only visitors." The answer felt graceful, yet it also carried disappointment hidden beneath acceptance. Lily could hear it. "I do not think that is fair," she said quietly. Samuel looked back at her. "Life rarely asks whether something is fair." "Maybe not." Her voice remained calm. "But kindness should count for something." For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Samuel smiled in a way she had never seen before. Not the smile of a lonely man remembering the past. The smile of someone seeing another person stand up for what mattered. "Eleanor used to say the same thing," he said softly. The evening passed quickly. Customers left. Lights dimmed. The clock above the register moved steadily toward 10. A few minutes before closing, Richard approached the table. Lily immediately noticed the tension in his posture. Samuel stood politely before the manager could speak. "No need to worry," Samuel said with a gentle smile. "I was just leaving." Richard seemed relieved. "Thank you, sir." Samuel reached for his coat. Then he turned toward Lily. "I appreciate every evening you have given me here." The words sounded final in a way that unsettled her. Before she could respond, he continued. "You reminded an old man that memories deserve company." Lily felt emotion rise unexpectedly in her chest. "You are welcome here anytime." Samuel looked at the window one last time. The empty chair remained across from his own, illuminated by the soft hanging light. Then he nodded and walked toward the door. Snow drifted outside beneath the streetlights. As he disappeared into the winter night, Lily stood motionless beside the table. For the first time since the friendship began, she could not shake the feeling that a chapter was ending. What she did not know was that another chapter, far more surprising than anything she imagined, was about to begin. The next Thursday felt strangely empty. All day, Lily found herself looking toward the entrance whenever the bell above the door chimed. Each time it was someone else. A family stopping for dinner. A delivery driver. A group of college students escaping the cold. But not Samuel. Evening settled over Millfield beneath a blanket of fresh snow. The restaurant moved through another busy night, yet the window table remained untouched. For the first time in months, no coffee cup rested beneath the hanging light. No familiar brown coat appeared by the door. No quiet stories filled the final minutes before closing. By 10 o'clock, Lily could no longer hide her disappointment. As she wiped down the empty table, her eyes drifted toward the chair across from where Samuel always sat. The absence felt larger than she expected. "Looks like your regular customer finally found somewhere else to go," one employee said casually while gathering menus. Lily forced a small smile, but said nothing. Deep down, she hoped he would return the following week. The next morning, Harper's Grill opened as usual. Winter sunlight reflected off snow-covered rooftops outside. Around mid-morning, a black luxury sedan pulled into the parking lot. The vehicle looked completely out of place in the small town. Several employees noticed immediately. A sharply dressed woman stepped inside carrying a leather folder. Her appearance drew attention from nearly everyone in the restaurant. She approached the counter. "Good morning," she said politely. "I am looking for Lily Carter." Lily stepped forward. "That is me." The woman smiled warmly. "My name is Margaret Collins. I worked with Samuel Whitmore for over 20 years. Lily froze. The name hit her immediately. Samuel Whitmore. Until that moment, she had never asked for his last name. Margaret opened the folder and carefully removed a newspaper article. She placed it on the counter. Lily looked down. The photograph featured Samuel standing beside several restaurants during a ribbon-cutting ceremony years earlier. The headline stretched across the page. "Founder of Whitmore Dining Group celebrates national expansion." Lily stared at the image. The man she knew as a quiet widower sitting by the window suddenly appeared surrounded by executives, reporters, and buildings carrying his family name. Samuel founded more than 200 restaurants across the country, Margaret explained gently. "Including this one." Lily looked up in disbelief. "This restaurant?" Margaret nodded. "Every location began because of him." The dining room seemed to fall silent around her. Memories rushed back all at once. The simple coat, the quiet conversations, the coffee, the photographs. Not once had Samuel mentioned any of it. Why did he never tell anyone? Lily asked. Margaret smiled softly. Because he wanted people to see him, not his success. She paused before continuing. And because after his wife passed away, very few places still felt personal to him. Lily looked toward the window table. Suddenly everything made sense. The familiarity, the memories, the deep connection to the restaurant itself. Samuel had not simply been visiting a favorite diner. He had been returning to a place woven into the story of his life. Margaret slid another envelope across the counter. "Samuel asked me to give this to you personally." Lily stared at the sealed envelope resting between them. Her heart began to race. Outside, snow drifted quietly beyond the glass. Inside, the truth about the old man by the window had finally arrived, and with it came the beginning of something she never could have imagined. For several seconds, Lily simply stared at the envelope resting on the counter. The sounds of the restaurant faded into the background. Margaret waited patiently while employees nearby exchanged curious glances. Finally, Lily picked up the envelope and carefully opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. The familiar neat handwriting immediately reminded her of the notes Samuel occasionally scribbled beside old photographs. Her hands trembled slightly as she unfolded the pages. "Dear Lily," the letter began. "If you are reading this, then Margaret has finally convinced me that surprises are sometimes worth keeping." A faint smile appeared on Lily's face. Even through the words, she could hear Samuel's gentle voice. She continued reading. "When I first walked into Harper's Grill that rainy night, I was not looking for food. I was not looking for conversation. I was looking for a place where a memory could sit quietly for a little while. Most people saw an old man arriving at closing time. You saw a person. That distinction matters more than you realize." Lily felt emotion rise inside her. Around her, the restaurant continued operating as normal, yet the letter seemed to create its own small world. Samuel wrote about Eleanor, about grief, about loneliness, about how kindness often arrived disguised as ordinary moments. Then she reached the final page. "For many months, you gave me something no amount of success could purchase. You gave dignity to memories that were fading. You protected them. You respected them. You reminded me of someone I loved very much." Lily paused before reading the final paragraph. "Several years ago, I established an educational foundation for employees across our restaurant group. Most people apply through formal programs. I have chosen a different path. If you wish to continue your education, pursue a degree, begin a business, or follow a dream that seemed financially impossible, the foundation will cover every expense. This is not a reward. Kindness should never become a transaction. Consider it an investment in someone who understands the value of people." Tears filled Lily's eyes before she finished reading. She lowered the letter slowly. "He did this." Margaret smiled. Samuel insisted. Lily looked toward the window table. The chair sat empty beneath the hanging light exactly as it had countless evenings before. Yet now she saw it differently. Not as the place where a lonely man sat alone, as the place where two lives quietly changed direction. Margaret reached into the folder and handed Lily another document. It contained information about the foundation, educational opportunities, and mentorship programs. Everything was real. Everything had already been arranged. "Why me?" Lily asked softly. Margaret's answer came without hesitation. Because when Samuel stopped being important to the world, you never stopped treating him as important. Silence followed. Outside, winter sunlight reflected across the snow. Inside, Lily folded the letter carefully and placed it against her heart. For the first time in years, a future she had nearly given up imagining suddenly stood before her. Not because of money, not because of luck, because one evening she had chosen to save a seat by a window for someone everyone else overlooked. And somehow that small act of kindness had traveled farther than she ever thought possible. 3 months later, spring began returning to Millfield. Snow disappeared from the sidewalks. Fresh leaves emerged along Main Street. The town seemed lighter somehow, as though winter had finally loosened its grip. Harper's Grill looked much the same as it always had. The same booths, the same scent of coffee, the same window table beneath the hanging light. Yet for Lily, nearly everything had changed. Thanks to the opportunity Samuel had quietly arranged, she had enrolled in business and hospitality management courses through the foundation. Her days had become busier than ever. She balanced work, classes, and studying late into the night. It was not easy, but each time exhaustion tempted her to quit, she remembered the letter folded safely inside a drawer at home. She remembered the old man who believed in her before she fully believed in herself. One Thursday evening, shortly before closing time, Lily finished helping a family near the front of the restaurant. As she turned toward the dining room, she froze. Someone sat at the window table. For a brief moment, her heart raced. The figure wore a familiar brown coat. The posture seemed familiar too. Then the person stood, revealing Margaret Collins. She smiled as Lily approached. I was wondering how long it would take you to notice. Lily laughed softly and sat down across from her. You nearly gave me a heart attack. Margaret glanced toward the empty chair beside the window. I had a meeting nearby. I thought I would stop in. For several moments they talked about classes, work, and life. Then Margaret reached into her purse and removed a small envelope. There is one last thing Samuel wanted you to have. Lily carefully opened it. Inside was a photograph. The image showed Samuel and Eleanor sitting together at the very same window table many years earlier. Both of them were smiling. Both appeared completely content. On the back, written in Samuel's handwriting, was a short message. The people who matter most are rarely the loudest people in the room. Lily stared at the words for several seconds. Then she noticed something else. Beneath the sentence was a date. The night he first walked into the restaurant. Tears gathered in her eyes immediately. Margaret smiled gently. He wrote that after meeting you. Lily looked toward the window. Evening light reflected softly against the glass. Cars passed outside. People hurried home. Life continued moving forward exactly as it always would. Yet somehow the table still felt connected to the past. How is he? Lily asked quietly. Margaret's smile widened. Better. Relief washed through Lily. Really? Really? Margaret nodded toward the photograph. You helped with that more than you know. After Margaret left, Lily remained alone beside the window table for several minutes. The restaurant had nearly emptied. The lights glowed softly overhead. Across from her sat the empty chair that had started everything. Yet it no longer felt empty. It felt remembered, loved, honored. She gently placed the photograph beside the flower vase that still appeared on the table every Thursday night. Then she smiled and looked out the window. Somewhere beyond the town, an old man was carrying memories with a little less weight than before. And inside Harper's Grill, a young woman carried a future that existed because she once chose kindness when nobody was watching. The truth was simple. Most people spend their lives searching for opportunities to change the world. But sometimes changing one person's evening is enough. Because the quietest acts of kindness often leave the longest echoes.